What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Friday. It's been a fun week, a lot of commitments, perhaps some more commitments to come. We will talk about that. Also, commitments going the other direction. FSU getting a big one. One of my favorite players going to Tallahassee for now. We'll see if he ends up there. I expect that team to be a disaster. Also, speaking of disasters, Florida State getting a big commitment. They're also getting a lot of criticism from coaches, agents, players for contracts that they drafted up that are just very outside the norm and abusive to the players. And just one more kind of criticism of NIL's Florida State's NIL program, which has been a disaster in numerous ways for the past few years. Let's talk about those some folks that have their contracts on point. That is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Love to be popping Pete right now to the podcast, but he's still a little off with his schedule. He'll be back in, I want to say, early next week consistently. Maybe we'll get him in here this weekend. He'll try to jump in later on if he can, but we'll get him in here soon from Madrid. So I'm trying to. I've been carrying it, but thank goodness for these commitments, or else I'd be running out of things to talk about. We'd be comparing the 2001 Canes to the 2019 LSU Tigers or something like that. But thankfully, recruiting has been on fire. Appreciate everybody there in the chat, rocking and rolling here on a Friday. So let's get right into the first order of business here, which is Miami has been linked to new potential defensive tackle commit. So, name that I want to talk about, Anthony Kennedy, defensive tackle out of Little Rock, Arkansas, guy who had a visit earlier this official visit season and now is being crystal balled to the Miami Hurricanes. Those of you who read the bank, and why wouldn't you? It's free, 7.44 million posting, counting on CanesInSight. I mentioned that this name was heating up. So, that was the first time his name had been mentioned as far as coming back potentially to the Canes. 4-star player on 247, high 3-star on the composite, 6'3.5", 335-pound defensive tackle, again, out of Little Rock, Arkansas. And Gabby Rudia, who was plugged in, put in his crystal ball for the Miami Hurricanes to land Anthony Kennedy. I second that prediction. Again, that's why he was brought up, is that he is creeping back into the scene here as a defensive tackle. And, there's a lot of ways to look at this. For example, it didn't take John long to say, well, James Johnson must be long gone if we're going after him. I don't think those two things are linked necessarily. Now, do we want to have a James Johnson or a Lamar Brown in this class? Absolutely. I think those guys, you would say very fairly, are further ahead. That's why they're ranked higher. They're just more ready to play, more sure bets, higher floor. So, in that respect, I think you're talking about this guy being, he's not going to necessarily replace a James Johnson if James Johnson goes to Georgia, or Lamar Brown if Lamar Brown goes to LSU or Texas A&M. But I think what you see here is we're talking about Freddie Wilson potentially as a defensive lineman to bring depth to this class from Spruce Creek. I think you are much better off with a guy like Anthony Kennedy, a borderline 4-star, could be a 4-star by the end of the year, to really bolster that camp and play alongside Tyson Bacon and whoever else is added. Miami will continue to recruit James Johnson, continue to recruit Lamar Brown, continue to recruit those defensive tackles. So I think with Anthony Kennedy, you were talking about somebody who is a positive addition potentially to this class. Again, I'm getting the same information as Gabby that this will happen, but not necessarily. It's not a replacement for a James Johnson or Lamar Brown. And I don't want to give that impression. I think this is about getting a body that is an SEC body. You see the offers. I think Arkansas, Missouri were the two teams really in there. You look at Missouri in particular, a team that's had a lot of first-round talent on defensive line, offensive line, good evaluation school. But this is, I don't think the ranking is wrong here with Kennedy. I think high 3-star, low 4-star makes sense. and fits in. Again, the school's recruiting him. And I think you're betting on that size, that athleticism, former basketball player to really develop. And I support this approach, which is to get guys who, are not guaranteed in this range, to get guys maybe that aren't guaranteed to be hits, but if they hit, you have a war daddy. You got a guy who's 6'4", 6'5", 335 pounds that can move, right? As opposed to in this range, you're looking at more of the, overachieving kind of guy, more similar like a Freddie Wilson. He was ranked a little lower, but guys that, maybe don't have the body type but are overachievers. I would rather have guys that have more upside, that have the chance to be NFL players at this particular position where body type and athleticism is so rare. But of course, listen, you also got to get the Justin Scotts. You got to get the, Jalen Carters, to use a Georgia example, of guys that are just, everybody knows they're the best and they are the best. That's a position that is very blue chip, 5-star heavy at the NFL level. You talk about the Pro Bowlers, the Chris Jones, the Justin Simmons, the Dexter Lawrences, etc. So I think that's what you're talking about at that position. But this is a positive step, I think, to get a different body type than Tyson Bacon, another guy that I think can help us. So let's turn on the film here. Not a ton of film for Anthony Kennedy, but the film we have is intriguing. Again, the thing that first jumps out of you clearly is going to be that size. He says he's 6'5", 335. Here you see him, got some movement skills, interior pass rush, just kind of swallows up right here. Competition looks solid. They're in Little Rock, Arkansas. This is not, just small private school competition where we're just bulldozing guys. There's some motor, nice movement skills. Again, 335. So you got to put this all in perspective here. Nice inside move there. Finishes with the sack. And you're seeing interior rush here. You see him playing defensive end at 335 pounds and getting the sack. Speaks well to his movement ability there. A lot of pass rush highlights here on this for a short highlight reel. You're seeing a lot of sacks for this guy. It's not just plugging. It's not just kind of being a rock. He is getting in the backfield and making some plays here. So you see the flashes. You see why Jason Taylor flew up to Little Rock to visit this guy and why Miami was on the official visit. Good balance there to keep his feet, finish the play. Not a fat guy. You see that, you could tell from the film. You can tell from the pictures of him. He's not a fat dude. This is a guy with some size. So I think, look, Arkansas's in there, Missouri's in there. Not a lock that Miami's going to get this one done, but I do think Miami is the favorite to get this one done, and I think it would be a positive addition if you are trying to build this room up to where you're not relying on the portal all the time and you're getting some homegrown talent, potentially some homegrown NFL talent, maybe like a Jonathan Ford is an example. I think actually Jonathan Ford was huge, actually smaller than Anthony Kennedy, but someone who developed into an NFL player. Now the teams he was on weren't great, so you don't think of John Ford, tremendous fondness. But if John Ford would have jumped in the portal before his senior year, I promise you the big time schools would have been all over him. He ended up getting drafted, playing in the NFL a little bit. So I think if you get a guy like that at this point of the process here, you're feeling good. But that doesn't mean that that's all it is, man. You still got to keep adding on and building. Cuban says he wants an all-time Canes team. We can do that. Listen, I was planning to do all these kind of hypothetical podcasts before the show or before this little period of commitments, but the recruiting stuff's been good and allowed us to really rock with it. So let me go to some earlier film of Anthony Kennedy. So this is going to be his sophomore year, right? Just to get a feel for the developmental timeline, because this is somebody who, being a bigger guy, you're betting more on the future. They're more of a developmental guy. So let's see what he looked like here as a younger player. He's gained weight. He must have had a growth spurt. He doesn't look as big here as you see him playing defensive end, which is interesting. Look at him. Wow, nice. Throwing this guy to the side. Yeah, he was moving better on his junior film, but you see some talent here. You see him get in the backfield. I think he did gain some weight there before his senior year, before his junior year. And there you see him making some plays. So, yeah, look, I like the pickup if Miami's able to get it done. I don't think this replaces James Johnson. I know there's going to be people in the comments like, oh, man, this is just this is a James Johnson related move, Lamar Brown related move. I think we just need to get that depth at this position. Stop relying on the portal because these guys in the portal cost a fortune. Get them at homegrown as much as you can at this particular position. Develop them. And, yeah, you do got to win your battles for the Justin Scotts of the world, the James Johnsons, the Lamar Browns, And I would put Lamar Brown probably in his own category above a James Johnson just in terms of projection. But you got to win those battles, man, if you want to be a championship program. This is the most important position, in my opinion, in college football, even more important than quarterback. If you don't have a good defensive line, you're cooked, especially defensive tackles are just so hard to find. You look at Michigan. Yeah, they had a first-round quarterback, but they didn't throw the ball. I mean, they threw it 12 times a game, but they had 2 defensive tackles that were first-round picks, and that allowed Michigan to win the championship. We saw what Georgia did with all those guys. So, I think that's a key position, and Miami is trying to add with an Anthony Kennedy. All right, switching gears to Jason Lopez. So big news of yesterday, Jason Lopez, one of my favorite players in the entire class, going to Florida State. So that commitment was unfortunate, certainly. Saw that Hayes Fawcett tweet come in. I wasn't necessarily surprised to see it, but there you go. Jason Lopez, the wide receiver from Chaminade, committed to play football and basketball at Florida State. So a lot of people ask me what happened here. They want to know, we're going to talk about the Lopez situation. They got some folks mad at Lopez. I definitely don't think he's trash. I think he's a great player, quite frankly. So there's a lot, people are freaking out. There's a lot of reaction to Jason Lopez. And I'll say this. Everybody knows this is one of my favorite players in the class. I've been talking about him for months. Basketball player, football player, highly productive in both. I think he's a great athlete. I think what you saw here was he simply thought that he had a better, and him and his camp, right, they thought they had a better opportunity to play both wide receiver and basketball at Florida State. I think a lot of things went into it. I think Florida State might have been more aggressive on the basketball side earlier than Miami was. Miami ultimately offered him in both sports. Jay Lucas was there. And I think Jason Lopez, the truth is, wanted to come to Miami. That's where he wanted to go. In fact, I'm pretty positive that's where he wanted to go. But I think, again, him and his camp felt that Florida State pursued harder in basketball from the beginning. And also, Vance Spafford committing to the Hurricanes. I don't think this changed Miami's opinion of Lopez. They wanted him and Spafford. But I think Lopez, his team, they're looking at that and they're saying, you're bringing other guys that play the same position as me, whereas FSU's rolling out the red carpet. We want to go there. Miami wanted Lopez badly. This was not a situation where Miami slow played Lopez or put him down in the pecking order or anything like that. Miami wanted Lopez badly. Mario Cristobal wanted Lopez badly. And I think Lopez wanted to go to Miami. But I think it's one of those things that when you consider all the factors I talked about, the camp said, this is where he belongs. And, I think we saw some of this with Restrepo, is that when you have a player who probably was told he can't do things in his career, a Cuban guy under 6 foot, I'm sure a lot of people told him he can't play both sports in college, can't, be the best receiver in South Florida, you can't do all these things. And then being able to do it, a lot of times there's a certain level of pride that develops there. You saw with Restrepo and his team, where, when you're told you can't do something and you do it, you put that back up a little bit. And I understand that. It makes sense when you think about it from their perspective in terms of all the times that they've been told, sorry, he's here, and you think he's here, and then he ends up being even better than you thought he was. So you just get that sort of mentality. So I think that, combined with the fact that they just felt FSU was pushing harder in basketball and had the path laid out in the slot more clearly than Miami, which had taken a Vance Spafford. I think that is why you see a Jason Lopez going to FSU. Again, I love Jason Lopez. You're not going to hear me come on and say, man, I think, Jason Lopez is overrated or he's going to stink. I think Jason Lopez is a 1,000-yard receiver. Now, what I think is going to happen, I think FSU is going to be terrible again this year. Maybe not 2-10, but, scrapping for a bowl and maybe not getting there. I also think that they are not going to be able to throw the ball very well, given Tommy Castellanos is a terrible thrower. Gus Malzahn is not exactly a receiver maven. So if you're Jason Lopez and you see a team that stinks and a team that can't throw, and hopefully, I don't know what the status is. I haven't talked to Miami after the commitment. If Miami continues to recruit Jason Lopez, keep that relationship, I can see this one circling back. And again, I think the player is outstanding. I think this guy is a legitimate star player, a great player. He'd be great for FSU, but FSU I don't think will be great for him. And hopefully that leads to some sort of breakup, which gives Miami the opportunity to get him. Because again, I think this guy is outstanding. Rhodes saying Daniel, the Noles got one commit that we're recruiting, and they're beating their 2-10 chest all over Twitter. Hilarious. I mean, look, we don't have to talk recruiting. I think most people know the difference in Miami's recruiting and FSU's recruiting. So, good for them. There's a good player. I don't think he'll end up playing for them because I don't think the coaches that are recruiting him right now will be his coaches, is what I think. Honestly, I'm more worried about the fact that these guys get fired and then the coach actually knows what they're doing, tries to recruit him back, keep him there, trying to keep him there. So that's more my concern because, I don't think this guy's getting coached by the guys that are recruiting him now. That's the simplest way I could say it. This staff's not long. For Tallahassee, it's just a matter of when FSU gets enough money to pay the buyouts. Canes fans saying Lopez is nice to have and not a need. If the staff wanted him, they would have had him. No, they wanted him. They wanted him, and he wanted to come here. Again, I think it was the factors I described as far as just feeling like FSU was just more laid out for him to play both sports. Devil's saying he committed to 2-1 trash, so he's trash at the end. I think he's trash if he stays there. He's trash. The team, he'll be part of trash if he stays there. This guy's going to be a great player no matter what. Which goes to my next point. Fans need to be careful what they say about a player because he still could be a future Cane. I agree with that. And also, I think this guy's a great player. I really do. I mean, the production he has, he's the best player in FSU's class. I don't have to look at the rest of their class. I can tell you he's the best player in their class, but I also don't think he's going to end up there. Brandon Goat saying he's not going to be a 1,000-yard receiver at Florida State. Jaden O'Neal committed to Florida State sucks. I mean, Oklahoma dropped him like a bad habit to pick up the quarterback they have now. Basically, Florida State's getting Oklahoma's leftovers at quarterback, and they're excited about that. So, good for the Noles. Devilish saying, who says Lopez wanted to come? I had heard that he had wanted to come to Miami, and he was all set to come, and then the Spafford thing kind of threw things for a loop. David Darby, mediocre basketball player. He's a good basketball player, man. This guy's 26 points a game. So I would not diminish him as a basketball player. He's just smaller, but the guy's very, very talented basketball player. But ultimately, look, Vance Spafford, I think you're adding the highest rated slot in the country, I believe. He's a top 70 player overall. I think he would be the highest rated guy considered a slot. But he's definitely, absolutely flying. 4.35 speed, 4.35 laser. Plays that way, 10.7 in the 100 meters. Just a downfield player who brings – there's things Lopez does very well, but I think when you talk about Spafford, the speed factor is just a different animal with him, and that's what he brings to the table. I watched a little video Overtime did on Vance Spafford with his high school team in Orange County. It was really good to see Spafford. You could see he's very much a team-first guy, team-oriented player. Everybody loved him. You could tell just from his interactions with different teammates. Nothing seemed fake or forced for the cameras. Tough player, physical. Obviously, the route running, speed, and hands, we already know about that. But seeing that video, you learn more about the person. Kind of like that California laid-back, very competitive, but very much a California laid-back personality off the field. It's going to be interesting to see the transition here to Miami. Obviously, he likes it because he decided to commit off of just one unofficial. I think with him, with Spafford, it's about getting that weight on. He's physical. He's strong. He's not somebody who just, watching him play and then watching him up close in that special that I think is like a very, weak player. He's someone who's strong. He's someone who plays strong, plays tough. I think it's just about adding mass for Vance Spafford. Lopez already pretty heavy player. I think when Spafford gets the mass on, the speed, the quickness, the route running will be outstanding. So, look, man, good for FSU getting this one done. I think Jason Lopez would be wise to not go to a program that doesn't throw the ball and doesn't win, and has screwed up NIL, which we'll talk about here in a second. And I think ultimately he'll wind up on a different team. So that'd be my prediction here on June 27th. I hope that team's the Canes because I think he's a great player, but I don't see him sticking with the Noles. And if he does, he'll be in the portal quickly. It's a disastrous situation. I agree, Rockstyle and Blofer. Let's keep recruiting this dude because I think he's going to be an outstanding player as long as they go to FSU where they can't get him the ball. So speaking of FSU and kind of NIL messes, story came out today from Chris Hummer, which talked about just basically how bad Florida's rev share contracts are. So these are the new contracts that the school enters directly with the players. You saw this. This is really the subject of the lawsuit from Xavier Lucas or Wisconsin against Miami regarding Xavier Lucas, where Wisconsin, and supported by the Big Ten, used a form revenue share contract between the school and the players. It's like the same contract for all the Big Ten schools, which every school uses to say, hey, here's your contract to make sure you're getting paid by the school with this new structure following the settlement where the school can pay directly. This is separate from the collective contracts. Not most conferences, but Big Ten, everybody uses the same conference. ACC does not have a form contract, so every school has a different contract. FSU has their own. And it came out through multiple sources talking to CBS that FSU's contract is by far the worst of any school that is dealing with players. And some of the headlines, you see it in the article from Chris Hummer, and I'll pull up the article now more specifically, but the headline really reads, they can extend the contract unilaterally, which is pretty crazy that these guys had that ability to extend the contract themselves without any new renegotiation. They could just say, all right, well, we're extending with the same terms. So you were a freshman, we paid you this much, you just ran for however many yards. Now you're getting an extension on the same terms. That is unusual. That ability, I'm sure, obviously it helps the school. Helps a school like Florida State that is lacking in funds, notoriously is running out of money and needs help from these kind of exploitive contracts. But for the player, you sign with FSU, you're like a Jason Lopez, and you have 1,000 yards as a freshman or your freshman of the year, they can extend you at the same cheap number without any kind of renegotiation. That is unusual, and that is something that the agents of the players are basically saying, hey, guys, watch out for FSU. They're trying to rip people off. Also, part of this is everybody wants the judge to bless these contracts. That's what the Wisconsin lawsuit's about. They want the judge to bless Big Ten's contract, Big Ten's form contract. That's why Big Ten supported that lawsuit so much, so they can say this contract's valid. They don't care about getting Xavier Lucas back to Wisconsin or whatever. So part of this is trying to get a contract supported by a judge. And some schools are putting in as much nonsense as they can to see what gets approved and what doesn't. FSU seems to be one of those, with the contract being particularly bad for players, but they're just trying to see what gets approved. And here's one NIL agent says they're throwing everything they can and the kitchen sink. Another thing in this contract is if you get injured, they can cancel the contract, and very open-ended language about how they can cancel the contract for injury. And remember, this is supposed to not be pay for play. But yeah, they can cancel contracts to injury. They can fine you up to $2,500 for like losing a pair of cleats. Those are pretty expensive cleats that they have. They'll fine you $2,500 and other things. And here's what an agent said. Some of the concepts are pretty standard, but FSU is going about this far more aggressively than any school that I've seen. I'm disappointed by the adversarial nature of these contracts. Now, someone on the team side, this is not an agent. This is someone on the Big Ten general manager says, this is not normal. I understand they have leverage, but, expletive. So you're talking about Florida State. Of course, the lawyers put out a statement, very much just jargon. As we enter into a new age of college athletics, Florida State has put together an agreement that provides deliverables and expectations for all parties. Each individual will be unique, and the hypotheticals are impossible to predict. However, we are committed to continuing to provide an elite experience for our student athletes in all aspects of their collegiate career. Florida State's looking forward to the mutually beneficial partnerships with our students in this new era. Just kind of legalese nonsense. But you see, it's unusual. It's one-sided in a way that even other schools and agents are complaining. They're pretending it's not paid for play, but then they're having things for injuries. Like, I don't know how having a torn ACL affects your ability to cut commercials, which is the NIL part of it. They're saying it's not paid for play, but obviously, if you're putting injury clauses that are this one-sided, it is pay for play. So, we'll see where this one goes. But yeah, here's the option to extend. This is the agreement that FSU is getting in trouble for. FSU shall have until the end of the student-athlete's NCAA eligibility dependent successive options to extend the term under the same terms, which means same money, locked in, and conditions as the existing term, unless the parties mutually agree, so FSU's got to agree, in writing to change such terms and conditions for additional periods of 1 year by providing written notice of extension. Email is sufficient, no later than 20 days prior to the end of the agreement, so basically after the season. Under such extension option, the total compensation payable to student-athlete for the 1 year period shall be a pro rata annualized portion of the compensation set for the initial term. So again, very much one-sided, unusual language from FSU, which is intended to be exploiting the players. And look, this is a pattern from FSU. Remember, their basketball program got in trouble for not paying players. Same school. Athletic department's been criticized for a decade for not having enough money. You think there's a coincidence that they're being so cheap and so one-sided here? They did not pay or not fulfill promises to their defensive line last year. If you remember, they were renegotiating with their defensive line. Patrick Payton, Josh Farmer, Daryl Jackson, right before the season. Ended up paying those guys to come back. Those players basically extorted them for more money and then showed up and basically, mailed it in for the season, had a horrible year on the defensive line. The team went 2-10. So this program is a mess. It is really kind of a laughing stock, not just for their on-field performance, which is horrible, but also the way they operate off the field as well. So I think you're seeing that in this process that, this program is basically just a joke. So, that's what's going on. Oh, by the way, putting this up on Twitter. I forgot to load this one up on Twitter. So if you haven't seen this on Twitter, or you're joining us now from Twitter, go ahead and watch from the beginning of the video and check out some of the topics we're hitting here. FSU saying FSU's made in China for half price. Team Miami. Yeah, they're the Intercontinental. I used to call them the Intercontinental Champion of Florida, but I think that's too kind when you're 2-10. That's more like a jobber, but that's more like Barry Horowitz. Shout out to Produced by Pack. Waman Wells asking, tell us something on the summer progress of the team. The bank's pre-recruiting, but what about the team? Again, I hear great things about Carson Beck. That's been consistent. Wide receiver hired CJ Daniels, going in the right direction, healthy, making plays. Malachi Toney, they think he's going to be a spectacular player. JoJo, they think he's going to be one of the better players in the country. At least they need him to be. So, that's something to look at. John's asking, any positive news on the remaining edge players? I mean, I think we're in the mix for a lot of those guys. Jaquez Wilkes, Anthony Jones, Bryce Perry-Wright, Nolan Wilson, who's probably more of a defensive tackle. Anthony Jones, I'm hearing less about lately. I'm hearing more about, Jaquez Wilkes. The thing with him was he had a family situation which prevented him from visiting when he was supposed to. We had a lot of momentum there. Hopefully we can get that one back turned around. I know he's an Auburn crystal ball. He's in Wiley, Alabama, but I think we have a chance there. We visited him in person in Alabama, and he visited us during spring. Bryce Perry-Wright, Tom Lloyd from 247 mentioned that he hears buzz with us and Bryce Perry-Wright from Buford, Georgia, who, is a very talented defensive tackle / defensive end, probably more defensive end for us in the Ruben Bain mold, but could be a defensive tackle. Clemson, Texas A&M, big time battle for him, but I think ultimately we have a chance to get that one done. There you go, David. Good to see you. Canes in 850 saying, I seen Johnson, crystal ball. This is James Johnson, the defensive tackle from Miami Northwestern, crystal ball to Georgia, just getting on for a second at work. Sorry for it to discuss. No, this we talked about only briefly. James Johnson, I could see him going to Georgia. I think with him, these defensive tackles are hard to get. They're big, they're physical, they're athletic. There's not so many of them walking around. You can kind of tell who the best defensive tackles are in the country just by looking at them for 2 seconds. It's not a sleeper position. So these are big time battles, man. And a guy like James Johnson, he's originally from New Jersey. So even though he's at Northwestern now, he's not really a South Florida kid. He was at Fort Myers last year. And again, I think he grew up in New Jersey. So he's an open competition. And then you talk about a school like Georgia, they've had 3 first-round defensive tackles in the last couple of years between Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter, who's an NFL superstar, Jordan Davis, Super Bowl champion. So that's a pretty good rap for this particular position on top of other guys who've been drafted. So that makes them, they're a tough battle. And I think money-wise, they're making a big push. They don't like losing battles themselves. They lost a couple to Miami with Jackson Canwell, Vance Spafford, and I think and the other teams as well that have beaten them. So they're punching back, and I think James Johnson is part of that punch back. We're going to continue to fight, but I could see Miami losing James Johnson to Georgia. But again, we lost Justin Scott to Ohio State when we thought we had momentum. Then Ohio State came and got him, and we were like, whoa, we thought we had Justin Scott. Ultimately get Justin Scott during the season, flipping from Ohio State, which is, comparable to Georgia in terms of the quality of program. So you got him back in the fold later on. Could I see something similar happening with James Johnson? I could. Juan Manuel Ventura, do you hear what the feisty 5'8" Chihuahua Castellanos had to say about Alabama and how he tore up the ACC? Yeah, we talked about it on the show on Wednesday. I mean, not very well thought out comments by Castellanos. Also not true. I mean, the guy was a 50% passer in the ACC. He got benched, quit on his team. So yeah, his ACC career was not as dominant as maybe he remembers it being. But I'm glad he's firing up Alabama, giving them bulletin board material, because you don't want to give bulletin board material to a team that's more talented than you, because now they're fully locked and loaded, ready to tear your head off. Not that they wouldn't have been already. It's the opening game, but I think just adds fuel to the fire. And you got these big 300-pound defensive tackles, maybe leaning on Castellanos a little more in his 5'9" frame. So I like that. Pinellas Kane asks, is this an NIL decision with James Johnson? I don't think it's NIL. I think Georgia's good. They produce a lot of defensive tackles that have gone to that first round. They've won championships led by defensive tackles. James Johnson is not a local guy, so it's not like we have that card really to play. And I think it's NIL to the extent that Georgia's playing ball in NIL, so he will have NIL from Georgia also. But I think it'd be naive for us to say, yeah, he's just going there because of the money. I mean, Georgia's produced defensive tackles in the first round. They've won championships. They won the SEC last year in an offseason for, they got a lot of advantages, right? So when NIL becomes even, there's no kind of personal tie necessarily. It's a tough battle. We've won some of those. We won Vance Spafford. We won a Jackson Canwell. But, yeah, you're not necessarily going to live on those victories, I don't think. Dre saying, what's the vibes on the slot receiver from Texas? Has us in the top three. There's Braden Robinson, speedy slot receiver. He's like, I think he's even faster than Spafford. Also very productive. Not as big as Spafford. Not as much, I don't think, as a receiver. More of a return threat than Spafford. We like him. I don't know if I've not heard his name in the mix, especially after getting Spafford. So to me, the focus at wide receiver, maybe we work in there. I think that's probably more Notre Dame. I think the focus on wide receiver and DWB saying after losing Lopez, any new names to watch. I don't think one has to do with the other, but I think the name to watch a receiver, at least that I am watching, is Tristan Keys, number one receiver in the country, visited Miami 3 times. I believe he's here now for a 7-on-7 tournament. It's a dead period, but he's here enjoying the nice weather, getting some rays. That'd be his 4th visit down here. So, just to South Florida in the last few months. So I don't think he's going to sign with LSU. I think Texas A&M's a threat. I think that, Tennessee is a threat. They have the number one quarterback in the country committed. And I'm not a big believer in spending big money on 5-star quarterbacks, but one thing it does help you with is, it does help you to a degree recruiting wide receivers in that class. So it's going to be a battle, man. But Miami's going to take a real shot at Tristan Keys. I think they obviously value him as the best receiver in the country. He is the number one receiver in the country. So, a lot of people are taking a shot. Great points here from the comments. Brandon the Goats asks, does Georgia have Islas Canarias? And Devilish saying, no one has Islas Canarias outside of Florida. That's correct. And as we know, the best Cuban restaurant on the planet, voted by the people, Islas Canarias, for over 40 years, serving classic Cuban dishes to locals and tourists. Tastes just like Abuela's cooking. New location and Dayland Dining Pavilion. Oxtail stew, vaca frita, of course, the Cuban sandwich. No one better in the country than Islas Canarias, in any country, than Islas Canarias. See, Marquez, our fan base has to evolve. We're a big-time recruiting operation now. We're not going to get every big profile player we target. Going to lose some to Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, et cetera. We'll win some too. I think that's exactly right. I mean, when you're having these big-time battles, you're going to lose big-time battles. You're dealing with big-time players. You got to win some. Also, you can't just lose them all and say, hey, we were in big-time battles. You got to win some of them. But I think when you're in enough of them, you're going to win some. Spafford, Cantwell would be big ones. Brett Kaloje, we're battling right now with the big-time schools. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. We'll see if we can get that one done. Sorry, Tennessee. We'll see if we can get that one done. Derek Cooper, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas. Those are the schools you're trying to beat out. Tristan Keys, number one player, number one offensive weapon, number one skill guy in the country. Obviously, that's going to be a battle. So these are things that you're fighting on. Yeah, good point. SDN, John Tavis Wyman. We got from Florida, Georgia commit. There's more than I've said, but we've won our fair share of battles. We've lost some, and that's just kind of, that's recruiting. You gotta play ball. You gotta compete to win. Marta Dubé, good to see you always. Any mind movement with James Johnson or did Georgia win? I project Georgia right now, but these things change fast. But I'd say Georgia right now. And look, who knows? Is it Justin Scott down the road? It's hard to tell. I'm not looking at a Justin or James Johnson to commit to us tomorrow. Brandon asking, any chance that Jake Ogden comes back at shortstop for the Hurricanes baseball? There's a chance. And, Vance Shahan, who Miami brought in from USC Upstate, who's in the Cape right now, really talented player. He's played second. He's played third. He's played shortstop. So they all have a little versatility. I think Ogden has a chance to come back. We'll have to watch the draft. But, not a lock either way. But a lot of stuff to talk about Miami Hurricanes baseball. Depending on how certain things play out here in the next few hours, we could do a Canes baseball pod today. If not, we got one coming up soon. Williams Bacon asks, why wouldn't we take both Kennedy and Wilson in case we strike out with Lamar and Johnson? We'll see how this thing goes. I think take Kennedy. You got Bacon in the class. Nolan Wilson's another big guy that you're trying to recruit at defensive tackle. So we'll see how that all plays out. Kevin Dennis saying, Anthony Kennedy reminds me of Kendrick Norton, who was a good defensive tackle for us, got drafted by the Panthers. Yeah, both big guys, can move a little bit. So I do think there's some similarities there. A lot of love for the Canes baseball pod. Yeah, I think if we get some news, some movement here, I think the next commit we get, when we have multiple commits to talk about, we got the right-hander Easton from FIU, their Friday starter. We talk about that, talk about some other stuff. But yeah, I think one more commit and we'll fire up a pod. So one more commit, and then you'll know we'll get Sebastian Font on there, and we will get a pod going. Yeah, sorry, I missed my coffee this morning, so I'm trying to work my way up here. We got almost 1,000 on. Remember to like and subscribe to the show. If you're joining us now from Twitter, I put that Twitter link out a little late. I apologize. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you missed anything, just scroll to the beginning. We'll also be putting out segments. That's one thing we've been doing is not only doing the live show, the different segments, whether it's Anthony Kennedy, Crystal Ball, or Jason Lopez, or FSU. We like to put those videos out separately so people can see those. Devilish saying those DTs getting drafted in the first round at Georgia were 5-stars to begin with. It's true. That's true. That's why you got to win these battles, man, for these 5-star defensive tackles. They're hard to get. Although I will say, to be fair, I don't know what Devontae Wyatt was ranked, but Jordan Davis, I believe, was a 3-star, which is crazy because he was like a 350-pounder, 360-pounder running like 4'8". But he actually was a 3-star from what I recall. Jalen Carter was not. Brandon, do I like the Heat's draft pick? Love him. Kasparis, KJ, love him. Reminds me of Goran Dragic. He can finish at the rim. He's 6'5", great ball handler, pick and roll player, has some strength to him, some body to him, tough. The shot will be fine. I like his free throws. I like his ability to get free throws, toughness, vision. I think he's going to be a great pick and roll player. And I think the next step is getting Kuminga, because now you basically have a team of European guards or European style guards. You got a lot of guys that are over 6'5" that can handle, between Hero, between KJ, who just drafted. Hakas can handle at his size. Jovic is like basically a point guard at his size. Bam also, even though he's a finisher, is also a guy that can handle and do those things. Pelly Larson can do that a little bit. So you got a lot of the same kind of guy. Now you need finishers. Bam plays both roles, creator and finisher. But other than him, there's really not a lot of finishers. Khalil Ware, of course, as a finisher. you add a Jonathan Kuminga who wants to put pressure on the rim, who gets to the line a lot, just everything is at the rim attacking, which we don't have any of that. We have more skill guys that want to be finesse away from the basket. So I like that combination of those guys with a Kuminga who's a big, athletic, honestly, one of the best athletes in the league, 22 years old. He wants shots. We need someone to take shots, particularly closer to the basket. So I think that combination just fits in a nice way for the Heat. We'll talk about that if it gets done. But love the draft pick. Love the idea of pursuing Kuminga. If you're going to go in this direction, I think it's the right direction for the Heat to go in. Just go young. Do we have a number one? I don't think so. But when you have a young team, let's say we're like a 5-4 or 5-3 seed team that's really young and having fun and playing well, that means our young assets are getting higher value, and that's going to allow you to make a trade, as time goes on. Once Pete hopping in, he'll hop in. Maybe this weekend, definitely early next week, he'll be back here in Miami. Long live Frenchie with an iguana. Plenty of those hanging around here this time of year. Hey, I know Miami offered Calvin Russell in basketball and football. Do we know if LSU offered in both sports? Yeah, I think they do. I think they are offering in both sports, and they want him in both sports. I would think Russell commits to LSU. I think Tristan Keys comes free, and then it becomes Miami, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and I think Miami's got a great shot there. I think he's visited Miami the most out of those three schools, I think. Frank Moore talking about baseball. I think Daniel Cuvée needs protection. Yeah, he does. Look, Brylan West from FSU, that's going to help whatever side of him he bats on. I think Sean Copeland from Miami-Dade, powerhouse at Miami-Dade. These are schools that produce big-time players. If you're talking about Miami in the portal, I think they should be getting the best players from Dade and FIU on top of other guys. Vance Spafford from USC Upstate, one of the better infielders in the portal. He's at Cape Cod now because he's a pro prospect. He's going to help a lot, and I think there's more to go in terms of the positions, players and and pitchers too. I think you're going to see more position players added to protect Cuvée, man. Whew, getting tired. Nick saying that Keys does not go to LSU in the end. Yeah, I don't think he does. He does. Sorry for my slurring. I could go all day, but sometimes I got to catch my breath here when we're rolling solo. But I got the chat, man. You guys are helping me out. Appreciate you guys. Over 1,100 on the stream. Appreciate you, man. We could do this all day talking Canes. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll go longer today just to get the stamina. We don't need Pete here to get the breathers. We can go solo, although we do miss Pete. We can't wait to get him back. Blue Green saying we need a stud catcher. I agree. Nick saying we need that Adidas has our back with Tristan Keys. Yep, they do. But, I think Tennessee is going to become an Adidas school. I think Texas A&M is an Adidas school. So you're seeing him sort of drift towards those Adidas programs. But Miami, I think of those, has maybe the best. I know it's the best city of those places. And Keys likes it here. So we'll see if we can get that one done. Miami's going to take their shot. Boyle, shout out from Germany. Good to see you. Brandon saying, need to get Big Vin on. Yeah, he's in New Jersey right now, man. I got to text him. I know that was fun having him on Wednesday. Appreciate you, Kermit. Smash that like button, like and subscribe. Got over 1,100 on here live. Rock D, does Northwestern have a beef with UM? When was the last time we got a big dog from there? We talked about this on last show. The last guy we got, Cam Kitchens, right? Cam Kitchens, whose jersey and his banner is up there in the rafters of the IPF. So that was a pretty good one. I just don't think they've had a lot of players lately. I think we could have gotten J-Rock done. J-Rock is – there are the two J-Rocks. It's Jason Lopez J-Rock and Jabari Flowers J-Rock. I lose track. But Jabari Flowers, the corner from Northwestern, went to Florida. I think we could have gotten that one done. It was just a situation where you spent so much money on like Xavier Lucas and Ethan O'Connor and Zechariah Poyser and all those guys that we brought in veteran-wise last year, that when J-Rock reclassified, it's like, man, we already kind of blew our load here with corners. We can't give you what you want. He goes to Florida. That's, I think, what happened there. Brandon's saying, what happened? Why did you two take away the names? Now it's our @. Yeah, I've noticed that. I'm trying to figure out who's who. Devilish saying, Jatavius Wyman rivals MVP defensive back, went to Miami, but Georgia got Jaden Harris. It's a good trade for us. I really thought Jaden Harris would be better for us. Great kid. I think he's going to be good at Georgia, probably more in a special teams role. And if he can get it going, he could help them. But I think we're good at safety with Zechariah Poyser, who Georgia wanted. Talk about recruiting battles with Georgia. Zechariah Poyser, Georgia wanted him to play safety instead of Malachi, or to replace Malachi Starks, went to the NFL. And they also wanted Ethan O'Connor to start. T-Raw wanted Ethan O'Connor bad. So, you got two of those guys that Georgia wanted for their defensive backfield this year, trying to win the SEC, win a national championship. We got those guys for the Canes. Williams-Bacon saying the West has been trash until last season. Yeah, the West has been down. I mean, Central's been the school by far. And we've been getting, Wesley Bassane from Central. Which, by the way, I did a Storm Sessions with Wesley Bassane, so check that out. I had a great interview with him on the official channel. I'll tweet that out here once I get off this show. But yeah, did a show with Wesley Bassane. He was a great interview. Ruben Bain from Central, of course. Mari Wallace, safety that we got from Central. Ezekiel Marcelin from Central. So we've been getting guys from Central. It's Armando Blunt, of course, 5-star player. So Central's been the one. Northwestern just hasn't been as good. Now Northwestern's coming up. You want to keep that relationship strong. We got to see how that plays out. Wami Winter asking, is Ethan O'Connor able to play nickel? Has he gained any weight? I'm sure he has gained weight. When I saw him, I mean, he wasn't tiny. He wasn't, huge. But, I think he should be able to play really wherever we need him, whether it's inside or outside. Very good cover guy, very talented cover player. So let me see if I can find. I did an interview here with Wesley. I'll see if I can find a clip to share. I'll post a social when it came out. But great interview with him for Storm Sessions. So check that one out. On Storm Sessions with my guy Wesley Bassane. He's gotten big, man. He's 230. Looked 230. Very serious. Ready to play. So yeah, fired up about Wesley Bassane after sitting down with him. Great kid. Great interview. Again, that's on Storm Sessions. You can check that out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then also on the official Miami Hurricanes YouTube. That's like an official Miami interview, separate from CanesInSight. But I'm the host and had a great interview with Wesley Bassane. Really enjoyed sitting down with him. You want athletes like Wes. You want athletes like, Vance Spafford, talking about all these guys. Only one way to do it, CanesConnection.com. New deal for Canes Connection for CIS members. If you sign in with CanesConnection.com/CIS, that's CanesConnection.com/CIS. I'm putting the link here in the chat. CanesConnection.com/CIS. You get 20% off your first month at any price point. So join. Season starting. Portal, recruiting. We're paying for these guys. Join the cause. Be part of the solution. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Let's get it going. Be part of it. Don't just talk about it. Be about it. Now is the time. Why wait? Let's do it now. Be part of it. 20% off for Canes Connect or for CanesInSight members. Use that CanesConnection.com/CIS link. I just put it in the chat. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Be part of the solution. D. Briz asking, do you think Lopez would be open, or sorry, Xavier Lucas would be open to playing safety? That's been discussed in the past, but I think corner, man, after seeing him in spring, I think he's a first-round corner. Personally, I mean, he's a little stiff, I guess, by like elite corner standards, but he runs 4.3 and he's 200 something pounds, 6'2". Kind of reminds me of the guy Eric Stokes that went to Georgia and went in the first round to the Packers as far as just size, speed, where they thought he might be a safety, but he was just fast enough. They put him there. Tyson Campbell, kind of similar too, where there was people that wanted Tyson Campbell to play safety, ended up being a top corner. Tyreek Stevenson, for the Canes, starting at corner in the NFL now. So you're not saying something crazy that hasn't been talked about, but I think with his speed and his NFL upside, I think it's going to be him and OJ Rodriguez are two main corners. Well, Manuel saying the guy I want for Storm Sessions are Armando Blunt and Malachi Tony. Two kids are just different. Very high IQ, very high instinct players, want to win, local guys. I'd love to get those guys on. Boy, I appreciate it. Says all these Storm Sessions are fire. Yeah, man, great interviews. When you sit down with these kids for 30, 40 minutes, really learn about who they are, kind of what's important to them, how they became who they are, their families. They all have different stories. You think, South Florida kid or whatever. They all have different pasts, all have different stories. So I think that's part of the cool thing about doing those Storm Sessions. Wesley Bassane talked about Haitian food versus Jamaican food. He's actually half Haitian, half Jamaican. So he gives his verdict. I know what Kevin Dennis thinks. But yeah, there's a different it's a debate between the two cuisines, and Wesley being half and half to try to settle it. But he was great. And again, a big man, 230. I was surprised by his size. He said he was under 200 when he came to Miami, and now he's in that 230 mode. Williams Bacon saying big comparison between Mario's best roster at Oregon versus our current roster. Let's do an episode. That could be an episode if things get quiet. Luckily we've got so much recruiting action. Haven't had to kind of sit down and do one of those, but that could be a cool thing to talk about. I'll dig into those. Like I said, recruiting's been so busy. I've been able to do as much of those kind of stories as I'd like, but man, it'll be maybe a little downtime between like July 15th and camp starting in the end of July, early August, where we can do some of that kind of stuff. But who knows, man? The news really never stops. And that's the cool thing about the current calendar. That's why you got to like and subscribe. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. So like and subscribe to this show. Got 1,300 on. Like and subscribe to the show. And let's get that thing going. 904 Kane asking, are the visits over? Yes, official visits are over. I don't know, some of those guys that didn't visit, like Vance Spafford, because he was sick and he didn't take his OV, Jaquez Wilkes, maybe some guys that could come, we try to flip, you bring them in during the season on an official visit. I could see that happening. So we've done that before. You don't want to have too many guys on officials during that time. You really, the brunt of it is here, but now there's unlimited visits with the new rules. So you can bring guys in kind of whenever. Whether you, like, let's say someone has a great senior year, you want to flip them. Hey, like let's say a defensive tackle committed to Minnesota, right, is having a great year. You bring him on an official. I think Cole McConaughey might have been one of those that he took an official during the season to flip from Louisville because he had a good senior year. So I could think that's something. Jaden Hewitt, do you say compare Oregon's rosters under Mario or classes? I'd be willing to look into that. It sounds like a great story, man. Jaden Hewitt, keep an eye on Jaden Hewitt, man. He's got some content coming up. Great writer. Somebody that we're looking forward to working with here on CanesInSight. Shout out Jaden Hewitt. But yeah, that'd be a good story. Canes Cat's asking, after you come back from OT7, can you give us a report on Jeffrey O'Neal from Team Raw? Is he the next Jeremiah Smith? I've heard a lot of guys are the next Jeremiah Smith. Braden Wright from Jacksonville. I know Team Raw and those guys have spoken highly of him. Lil Rod, who's like the youth sensation, I think he's already on Team Raw, and he's like, 13 years old. He's kind of been talked about as the next thing. Jeremiah Smith is 101. It took, to me, he's the next Andre Johnson. And it took, I don't know how many years for another, 26 years for another Andre Johnson, 25 years. So we'll see. Canes Cat say Jeffrey O'Neal, 2029 for Plantation. He has 15 offers. Man, 2029. What is that? That's 4 years from now. I just hope I'm still breathing, man. I haven't even looked at the 27 guys. Alaric asking, any word on who's changed their body the most? Good question. Armando Blunt continue to get bigger. This is a good question. I'm just trying to think it through. JoJo's the one that I think needs to the most. I don't know his update, but you want him to really bulk up. Wesley, again, he looks really, really big from just my personal observations. Lightfoot has gotten stronger. I don't think he's going to be, ever somebody you look at and you're like, wow, this guy's huge. Oh, I'll tell you a good one. Malik Bryant, man, he was never he always was pretty strong for his height. But Malik Bryant, man, I look at him and it's kind of like Horton last year. Like, whoa, this looks like an NFL dude, just body wise. So Malik Bryant, I would say Alaric is the guy that catches my attention as someone who's changed their body for the better, gotten stronger, really maximized what they can do, rushing the passer and against the run. He'll be a boundary defensive end for us, which means he's going to play closer to the sideline and more of a stand-up role. Reek Flair, the nature boy, asking, what about flipping the wide receiver from Central committed to Purdue as a plan B? He went off in Miami's camp. I think they're on plan A. They're on Tristan Keys' plan, right? That's everybody's plan A. He's the number one receiver in the country. So I think that's really what they're focused on. But look, Central, we know South Florida. There's going to be guys that are risers that in 3 years they're all Americas or first rounders or second rounders. You're like, what? Why was this guy down the mix? So Reek Flair, save that message because you might be bringing it back here on a chat in 4 years saying, hey, my guy just got picked by the Steelers second round. Why didn't we offer him? So I think they're focused on plan A, which is the Tristan Keys plan. 904 Hurricane, 38 drops. Let that sink in. That's what Carson Beck had to deal with last year with no running game. Carson Beck is going to make the haters cry this year. hope you're right. I think there was a lot of things he was working against with the receivers not being so good, the running games not being so good. But, you know, you got to do it. So we'll see. I know he looks healthy, and I know he's somebody who has the ability to be that first overall pick. And there's not that many guys that had that much talent in their body. So keep an eye on that. One man Ventura saying Xavier Lucas looked real big on those wide receiver videos. Yeah, I mean, again, I saw him in person all spring, and he is every bit over 200 pounds, 4'3". I liked how he looked at corner as far as moving around, just playing corner, not just being a specimen. He looked locked in. So my takeaway from spring, one of my takeaways was, first round, second round for Xavier Lucas if he stays healthy, just because the tools are so significant. Guys like that don't last very long. So I do think that Xavier Lucas is that type of talent. Usually don't add those guys in the portal, which is why Wisconsin's so mad and they're suing Miami. It's because, he's pretty talented. Tyler Overly asks, is there going to be a late flip of Jason Lopez? It could be. Again, I think FSU is going to have a bad year. I don't think they're going to throw the ball very well. And I think all those things are going to lead to Jason Lopez saying, do I really want to go here? Now, maybe he's going to sign one of these FSU insane contracts that locks him in and they have to sue. But, yeah, I think it could be a guy that you see flipping late. Jonathan Crumley asking how the freshman DBs looking, including the redshirt freshman. The best freshman DB in spring, I thought was, and I think the feedback I got was the best one also, was Chris Ewald, the corner out of Chaminade. He was playing a lot of nickel. Now you brought in Keontae Scott, who's going to, I think, hold down that nickel role from Auburn. But Ewald was looking like he's going to have big playing time. He may still have a lot of playing time. He hurt his collarbone towards the end of spring. I'm sure he's fine. So, but we'll see how that one plays out. Kyle saying, I'm most concerned about safety in this recruiting class. What about you? Possible. Look, Devin Jackson, you got to get that one done. Blake Stewart's trending to Clemson. So, yeah, you want to get Devin Jackson done. No question about that. That made me feel better. Brandon asking, how's Damari Brown? I thought he looked good when he came back. He came back halfway through spring. I thought he looked really good. I think that's the reason why you saw Emmanuel Carnley leave, because Damari Brown came back looking good, playing corner. I think Damari Brown, of all those guys that should move to safety, I would put him at safety. I think he's good there. He's so physical. But, right now he's playing corner, looking good. Fitzgerald going to play corner, safety. I think also corner for him. He's different than Brown. I think Brown could play safety easily because of his physicality. I think that Fitzgerald more on the corner side. Trey Kendricks, if we don't get Blake Stewart, do we take Darius Hughes from the West? I don't see that. Anything's possible, but I don't see that right now. Safety is an interesting one. We'll see how that one goes. Ryan asking, why can't we never land a top 5 wide receiver in the country? Well, you're after Tristan Keys right now. You're hoping to change this narrative. I think the biggest issue has been we just haven't had first-round receivers. So a lot of these top receivers go to places that have produced top receivers, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's LSU, really those two at the top of the list. Alabama, right? Those are schools that have produced elite receivers. So if you're an elite receiver, you can say, I go there, I kind of follow through with the process, and I'm there. I think we need to break that chain by getting a JoJo Trader perhaps to the first round. That'd be the easiest way to kind of get that thing the way it's supposed to go. Kevin Dennis asked for an update on number 25 from Vandy. That's Jadis Richard, tore his ACL versus Duke. Still rehabbing. Well asked, what's Miami going to do with so many quality corners? Look, I mean, you saw the Syracuse game. This is a question we're dying to ask. And by the way, none of these guys have played for Miami yet, like in games, So we'll see. I hope we're asking this question and we're saying, man, we're benching good players, in the middle of the season, because that means that we've been developing guys and guys are performing. So I'll wait and see, but I think we will be able to have really good depth at that position for once. Jonathan Crumbly asking, is Amari Wallace a safety or a nickel? He played safety in spring, fully healthy. I know he broke his leg nasty in during the season. People thought he might never be the same, and that turned out to be a clean bone break. He was perfectly healthy. Spring, he was like 100%. You would never notice he was hurt. Moving around perfect, physical. He's got to get bigger. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but really instinctive player. Also a Team Raw guy, Raw Miami guy. So shout out to Raw Miami. Hoping they win the 7-on-7 tournament this weekend. But you're hoping that those guys do well. There's a lot of Canes there. It's a very Cane-friendly program. Jalen Jones, safety from MacArthur, formerly at Western, just committed to Miami for the 2027 class. And that's another raw Miami guy. Yeah, Kevin Porter saying Wallace is safety. I think that's where he ends up. Guys, don't forget, if you want to get geared up for the summer or just prepare for the season, prepare for anything, just get your hats. MiamiHTS.com, Miami Hurricane team store right across the street from campus. This is the official retail provider of the Miami Hurricanes. This is Harry Rothwell, is the guy from All Canes, All Sports, the place right next to the baseball field, right next to Mark Light. If you grew up going there, it's now across the street at the Hurricane team store. Plus, it's online, MiamiHTS.com. Whether you're in store or in person, use promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item. You got hats, new hats. You got all this kind of stuff: pillows, Adidas, pet wear, shorts, throwback jerseys. Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, you name it, they got it at the team store. Got hats for the kind of the older guys like myself. You got the new school type of hats, visors, the hats for the ladies. You name it, they got it at the Miami Hurricane team store. Oh man, this is fun. I'm running out of breath again. I apologize, man. I'm trying to carry the load. But I can talk about this stuff all day. Nothing gets me more juiced up than talking Miami Hurricane football. If we get some baseball commits, we'll do a baseball show. I'm sure we'll do a show tomorrow, Breakfast with the Canes. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. And check out CanesInSight.com, 7.44 million posts and counting. Go Canes.